The alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. sharp, just like every other day for the past 3 years. Damon rolled out of his narrow bunk and pulled on the same gray uniform that marked him as what the aliens called maintenance class. The fabric was rough against his skin, designed to remind humans of their place in the Grand Zephyrian Empire. He walked down the corridor where dozens of other humans were getting ready for another day of serving their alien masters. The hallway smelled of cleaning chemicals and recycled air. Through the small windows, he could see the massive spires of the Imperial Palace reaching toward the purple sky of Nexus Prime. "Another beautiful day in paradise," muttered Jerome, his bunkmate, as he tied his work boots. The sarcasm was thick in his voice, but he kept it quiet. The Zephyrians had sensitive hearing, and complaining could mean punishment. Damon grabbed his cleaning supplies from the storage room and headed to the assignment board. Each morning, the alien supervisors would post job locations for the human workers. Most days he cleaned the lower levels, offices, storage rooms, places where important aliens rarely went. But today was different. His name appeared next to a location he'd never seen before: Ceremonial Wing, Level 95, Special Assignment. Level 95? Keisha looked over his shoulder at the board. She was one of the few humans who'd earned respect from the Zephyrians through years of perfect work. Her dark skin showed the marks of long hours under harsh artificial lights, but her eyes still held determination. That's way up in the restricted sections. What could they want cleaned up there? Before Damon could answer, a shadow fell across them. Commander Vextar stood behind them, his blue skin glistening and his forearms crossed in what humans had learned meant displeasure. The alien's translator device crackled as he spoke. "Human Damon 7749, you will report to Empress Zalkara immediately. Do not keep her waiting." The walk to the Empress's chamber felt like marching toward his own execution. Damon had only seen the ruler of the Zephyrian Empire once before, during a mandatory assembly where she'd reminded the humans of their proper place in society. She was massive, even for her species, with skin that shifted colors based on her mood and eyes like black diamonds. The throne room was bigger than the entire human quarters. Damon kept his head down as he approached, following the protocols drilled into every human servant. Stop 10 feet away. Wait to be acknowledged. Speak only when spoken to. You are the cleaning specialist recommended by your sector supervisor, the Empress said. Her voice carried the musical quality typical of her species, but underneath it was pure authority. There is a task requiring delicate attention. She gestured with one of her upper arms toward a holographic display showing the palace layout. A section he'd never seen before appeared highlighted in red. The old ceremonial wing contains artifacts from the early days of our expansion. One piece in particular has been neglected for too long. It requires cleaning, but previous workers have proven inadequate. Damon risked a glance upward. The Empress's skin had shifted to a pale yellow curiosity, if he remembered correctly from the cultural briefings. This statue is older than our current dynasty. It was discovered on a dead world during our ancestors' great conquests. Some of our historians believe it may have belonged to the species that once lived there. She paused, her skin darkening slightly. A species that no longer exists, of course. The weight of her words settled on him like a heavy blanket. Dead world. Extinct species. He wondered briefly if she was talking about Earth, but that was impossible. Earth was just a story, a myth that older humans whispered about in quiet moments. You will clean this artifact thoroughly but carefully. Do not damage it. Do not attempt to move it. Simply restore it to its original condition. The Empress leaned forward on her throne. And human, this assignment is classified. You will speak of it to no other workers. Understood? Yes, Your Imperial Majesty, Damon managed to say without his voice breaking. As he left the throne room with his new security clearance and detailed instructions, one thought kept running through his mind. Why would they trust a human with something so important? In 3 years of service, he'd never been given anything more significant than scrubbing floors or emptying waste units. The elevator ride to level 95 took nearly 5 minutes. When the doors opened, he stepped into a corridor unlike anything he'd seen in the palace. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to shift and move in his peripheral vision. The air felt different here, thicker, almost alive with some kind of energy that made his skin tingle. At the end of the corridor, massive doors stood slightly ajar. Beyond them lay darkness and the promise of something that would change everything he thought he knew about humans, aliens, and the galaxy itself. The heavy doors creaked as Damon pushed them open, and the sound echoed through the vast chamber beyond. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a room that took his breath away. The ceiling stretched so high he couldn't see the top, and the walls were covered in intricate carvings that seemed to tell some kind of story. But it was the figure in the center that made him stop dead in his tracks. The statue stood at least 12 feet tall, depicting a being in elaborate armor that looked almost ceremonial. Even under layers of dust and grime, Damon could see the incredible detail in every piece. The face was strong and noble, with features that looked surprisingly familiar. Almost human. Just a statue, he whispered to himself, trying to calm his racing heart. Just clean it and get out. He set down his supplies and pulled on his rubber gloves. The cleaning solution felt cold in the recycled air as he poured it into his bucket. His hands shook slightly as he dipped the cloth and approached the towering figure. The moment his cloth touched the statue's chest plate, everything changed. A low humming filled the chamber, growing louder by the second. Blue light began pulsing through what looked like veins in the metal, spreading outward from where he'd touched it. Damon stumbled backward, his cleaning supplies scattering across the floor. The statue's head turned toward him with a mechanical whir that sounded like machinery coming to life after centuries of sleep. Eyes that had been dark and lifeless now glowed with brilliant blue light, scanning him with obvious intelligence. Systems activating, the figure spoke, its voice deep and somehow warm despite coming from metal lips. Bioscanners detecting, impossible. Human genetic markers confirmed. How can this be? Damon's legs gave out and he collapsed onto the cold floor. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. Statues didn't move. They didn't speak. They definitely didn't have glowing blue eyes that looked at you like they could see straight through to your soul. You're alive? He managed to stammer. The massive figure took a step forward, its movements surprisingly graceful for something made of metal. I am Guardian Protocol Unit Designation Titan 5, though my creators knew me by another name. I have been in stasis for. The eyes flickered as if calculating, 3,812 years. But you, small one, you carry the genetic signature of Terra's children. Earth's children. Yet that cannot be possible. Terra? Earth. Damon's voice came out as barely a whisper. Those are just stories the old-timers tell. Earth is a myth. The Guardian's head tilted slightly, an almost human gesture of confusion. Stories? Miss? Child, I was built on Terra Prime in the foundries of New Angeles. I served in the Terran Federation fleet for over 2 centuries before the Great Silence fell upon our worlds. Slowly, carefully, the Guardian knelt down to bring his face closer to Damon's level. Even kneeling, he was still twice as tall as a human. The blue glow of his eyes cast strange shadows on the chamber walls. What year is this by Terran standard? The Guardian asked. Damon's mind was reeling. I don't know what Terran standard means. It's year 2847 of the Zephyrian Empire. Something like sadness passed over the Guardian's metal features. The Zephyrians. Yes, I remember them. Small beings with blue skin and superior attitudes. They were barely developing space travel when Terra's fleets first encountered them. He paused, processing this information. If they rule now, then the worst has come to pass. What do you mean? Damon found himself leaning forward, despite his fear. Tell me, human child, what do your people know of their history? What do the Zephyrians teach you about how humans came to serve them? Damon repeated the story he'd been taught since childhood. Humans were a primitive species discovered on Generation ships, fleeing their dying homeworld. They were rescued by the generous Zephyrian Empire and given the opportunity to serve and contribute to galactic civilization. With each word, the Guardian's expression grew darker. Lies, he said finally. Every word of it. Child, your people once commanded the greatest civilization this galaxy has ever known. Human ships traveled between stars as easily as you walk between rooms. Human scientists unlocked the secrets of life and death. Human artists created wonders that brought tears to the eyes of species across 1,000 worlds. The chamber fell silent except for the quiet humming of the Guardian's systems. Damon stared at this impossible being, his entire worldview crumbling around him. But if that's true, he said slowly, what happened to us? How did we end up as servants? The Guardian's eyes blazed brighter. War happened. Betrayal happened. And the greatest tragedy in galactic history began with those who called themselves our allies. He stood again, his full height casting Damon in shadow. But perhaps the story is not over after all. The Guardian moved to the far wall and placed his massive hand against what looked like blank stone. Suddenly the wall came alive with moving images, star maps, ship designs, and scenes of a civilization Damon had never imagined possible. Your true history begins here, the Guardian said, his voice carrying the weight of ages. 5,000 years ago, humans took their first steps beyond Earth's solar system. Not in crude generation ships as the Zephyrians claim, but in vessels that could bend space itself. The wall showed sleek ships that looked nothing like the bulky Zephyrian vessels Damon knew. These moved with grace and purpose, their hulls gleaming with technology that seemed almost alive. The Terran Federation grew slowly at first, the Guardian continued. Your ancestors were careful, respectful. When they met other species, they offered friendship and trade rather than conquest. The galaxy had never seen anything like human adaptability and creativity. Damon watched in awe as the images showed humans working alongside dozens of alien species. Cities that floated in space, planets transformed from barren rocks into garden worlds, technologies that seemed like pure magic. But humans weren't just explorers and builders, the Guardian said. They were protectors. When the Void Swarm emerged from dark space and began consuming entire star systems, it was human fleets that stood against them. The images shifted to show a war unlike anything in current galactic memory. Massive creatures that looked like living shadows devoured everything in their path, while human ships fought desperate battles to stop them. The war lasted 3 centuries. Species after species fell to the swarm, their worlds stripped bare and left as empty husks. The Zephyrians, the Korthak, the Velani, all of them hid in their home systems while human forces held the line. Damon felt his chest swell with pride he'd never experienced before. We won, didn't we? Humans stopped them? The Guardian's expression darkened. Yes, child. Humans won. But victory came at a terrible price. To defeat the swarm completely, your ancestors had to make the ultimate sacrifice. They used something called the Genesis Protocol, a weapon that could eliminate the swarm from existence, but at the cost of Earth's sun itself. The wall showed the moment of Earth's death. The sun flickered and died, taking with it the birth world of humanity. Damon felt tears he didn't know he was capable of streaming down his face. The surviving humans scattered across the galaxy, the Guardian continued. Some went into deep sleep aboard colony ships. Others integrated with allied species. Many simply disappeared into the vastness of space. The Federation fractured without its heart. But what about the other species? Damon asked. The ones humans saved? Didn't they help? The Guardian's eyes flashed with something that might have been anger. Here is where the greatest betrayal in galactic history begins, child. The species that humanity had died to protect saw an opportunity. With human military power broken and their people scattered, it was easy to rewrite history. The images now showed Zephyrian ships arriving at abandoned human colonies. Instead of offering aid, they enslaved the survivors, claiming they were primitive refugees who needed guidance. The Zephyrians were not alone in this deception. The Korthak Empire, the Velani Syndicate, dozens of other species participated. They divided human survivors among themselves like property. They destroyed records of the Federation, erased evidence of human achievements, and rewrote history to make themselves the heroes. Damon's hands clenched into fists. Every lesson he'd been taught, every grateful prayer he'd been forced to recite to the generous Zephyrian Empire, all of it was built on lies and theft. They even took our technology, the Guardian continued. Every major advancement in the current galactic civilization came from studying abandoned human research stations and ships. The faster-than-light drives, the energy weapons, the terraforming techniques, all human innovations claimed by those who enslaved us. But you, Damon said, looking up at the towering figure, you remember the truth. I am one of 12 Guardian units placed on worlds throughout what was once Federation space. We were programmed to activate only when touched by human DNA, and only after sufficient time had passed for the political situation to stabilize. The Guardian's chest panel opened, revealing a crystalline core pulsing with stored data. Each of us carries complete records, technical specifications, historical databases, star charts showing the locations of hidden human colonies that survived the scattering. Damon stared at the crystal in wonder. You mean there are still free humans out there? More than that, child. There are humans who never forgot what they were. Communities that preserved the old knowledge, waiting for the day when truth would return to the galaxy. And now, with your awakening of the Guardian Network, that day has finally come. The chamber filled with new light as dormant systems throughout the palace began responding to the Guardian's activation signal. Somewhere in the distance, alarms started blaring. They know I'm awake now, the Guardian said grimly. The game has begun. The alarms grew louder as red emergency lights began flashing throughout the ceremonial wing. Damon could hear heavy footsteps echoing through the corridors outside, Zephyrian security forces moving fast toward their location. "They're coming," he said, his voice tight with fear. The Guardian's massive form began to change. Armor plates shifted and expanded, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden beneath the ceremonial exterior. His peaceful blue glow intensified, and suddenly Damon realized he wasn't looking at a statue anymore. This was a war machine from humanity's golden age. "Stand behind me, child," the Guardian commanded. "What you are about to witness is why the galaxy once feared to challenge humanity." The chamber doors exploded inward as a squad of Zephyrian soldiers burst through, their energy rifles already charging. Commander Vextar led them, his blue skin now dark purple with rage. "Impossible," he shouted through his translator. "The artifact is moving. Human slave, what have you done?" Before Damon could answer, the Guardian stepped forward. The movement was so fluid and graceful it seemed like he was dancing rather than walking. But when the soldiers opened fire, their energy bolts simply bounced off invisible shields that shimmered around his body. "I am Titan 5 of the Terran Federation Defense Corps," the Guardian announced, his voice now carrying harmonics that made the very air vibrate. "You are trespassing on a protected archaeological site. Stand down immediately." Commander Vextar's forearms trembled with fury. "You are nothing but scrap metal from a dead species. Destroy it." The soldiers unleashed everything they had: plasma rifles, sonic disruptors, even a portable fusion cannon one of them dragged into position. The weapons that had kept humans enslaved for centuries struck the Guardian's shields and simply stopped. Then it was the Guardian's turn. Light erupted from his hands, but not the harsh energy beams of Zephyrian weapons. This was something different, controlled bursts that struck each soldier with surgical precision. They collapsed instantly, not dead but completely paralyzed, their nervous systems temporarily shut down by technology they couldn't understand. Commander Vextar backed against the wall, his skin cycling through colors of fear. "What are you?" "I am what your ancestors feared most," the Guardian replied calmly. "A reminder that humanity was never meant to serve." More soldiers poured into the chamber, these ones carrying heavier weapons. Damon pressed himself against the far wall as the battle intensified. The Guardian moved like liquid lightning, his massive form somehow avoiding every shot while his return fire disabled attacker after attacker. But Damon could see something was wrong. The Guardian's movements were getting slower, his blue glow flickering. The crystal in his chest was pulsing erratically. "My power cores are failing," the Guardian said during a brief lull in the fighting. 3,000 years in stasis have taken their toll. I cannot maintain combat mode much longer. Panic flooded through Damon. What do I do? How do I help? The Guardian reached into his chest compartment and pulled out a device no bigger than Damon's hand. It pulsed with the same blue light as the Guardian's eyes. "This contains everything: star charts to the hidden colonies, activation codes for the other Guardian sites, technical specifications for weapons and ships that will make the Zephyrian fleet look like toys. But most importantly, it contains proof of what humanity truly was." He pressed the device into Damon's hands just as another wave of soldiers arrived, these ones in full combat armor. The human servants throughout this palace, they deserve to know the truth. Every human on every world deserves to know they are the children of the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever seen. The Guardian systems began shutting down one by one, but his voice remained strong. "Find the one called Keisha in the servant quarters. She has the skills to unlock the data files. Tell her the Phoenix code is, Terra remembers." "I don't understand," Damon said desperately. "What's the Phoenix code?" "It's how the survivors will know you speak for the Federation," the Guardian explained as his glow faded. "Every hidden colony, every secret human settlement, every Guardian site, they're all waiting for someone to speak those words." The soldiers were setting up what looked like mining equipment now, preparing to cut through the Guardian's failing shields. Commander Vextar was screaming orders about capturing the artifact intact. "There's a service tunnel behind the wall panel to your left," the Guardian said, his voice growing faint. "It leads to the lower levels. Go now before they realize what you carry." As Damon reached the hidden panel, the Guardian's eyes blazed one final time with their original brilliance. "Tell them, child. Tell every human in the galaxy that the age of servitude is ending. The Federation remembers its children, and we are coming home." The blue light died, and the Guardian stood motionless once more. But in Damon's hands, the device pulsed with the promise of revolution. Damon crawled through the service tunnels for what felt like hours, the Guardian's device clutched against his chest. The metal was warm to the touch and pulsed with a rhythm that almost matched his heartbeat. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of the Zephyrians trying to break through the ceremonial chamber, their cutting tools screeching against the Guardian's inactive form. When he finally emerged in the servant quarters, it was nearly midnight. The common area was empty except for a single figure sitting at one of the worn tables, reviewing maintenance schedules by the dim light of a tablet. Keisha looked up as he stumbled out of the ventilation grate, covered in dust and breathing hard. "Damon? What in the galaxy happened to you?" She set down her tablet and rushed over to help him. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," he gasped, still trying to catch his breath. "I've seen the truth." Over the next hour, Damon told her everything. At first, Keisha's expression showed nothing but disbelief. Talking statues? Ancient human civilizations? It sounded like the fever dreams of someone who'd been working too hard. But when he showed her the device and spoke the Phoenix code, everything changed. The small crystal began projecting holographic images into the air between them. Star maps showing the locations of dozens of worlds. Technical blueprints for ships that looked like works of art. And most importantly, communication frequencies for the hidden human colonies scattered across the galaxy. "Terra remembers," Keisha whispered, staring at the projection showing Earth's final moments. Tears streamed down her face as she watched the sun die to save the galaxy from the void swarm. "All this time they told us we were nothing. That we should be grateful for their charity. We need to tell the others," Damon said urgently. "Every human in this palace needs to know." But Keisha was already thinking bigger. As the head of the communications maintenance team, she had access to the palace's entire network. More importantly, she knew how to reach the communication satellites that connected every world in the Zephyrian Empire. "Not just the palace," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Every human on every world. It's time they all learned who we really are." Working through the night, they accessed the palace's main communication array. The Guardian's device interfaced with the Zephyrian technology as if it had been designed for it, which Damon realized it probably had been. Human engineers had likely built the original systems that the Zephyrians had copied and claimed as their own. At exactly 6 a.m., as the morning shift of human workers was beginning across thousands of worlds, the transmission began. The holographic message appeared on every screen in every human quarter throughout the Empire. The Guardian's voice, preserved in digital form, told the true history of humanity. The images showed the glory of the Terran Federation, the sacrifice that saved the galaxy, and the betrayal that followed. But most importantly, it showed the locations of the other Guardian sites. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On the mining world of Kepler-7, human workers abandoned their shifts and marched to the coordinates the message had provided. When they found the Guardian buried in an artificial cave, their touch awakened another war machine that had waited 3 millennia for this moment. On the agricultural planet of New Harvest, humans discovered their Guardian hidden beneath what they'd been told was an ancient temple. The machine activated with the same blue glow, the same message of hope and remembrance. Within days, reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. 12 Guardian sites had been activated by human touch. Each one contained not just weapons and technology, but ships, massive vessels hidden in underground hangars, preserved and waiting. The Zephyrian Empire tried to respond, but their fleets were designed to fight conventional enemies. The Guardian ships moved through space like living things, their weapons cutting through Imperial armor as if it were paper. More importantly, the human crews operating these vessels fought with a fury born of 3,000 years of suppressed heritage. Damon found himself aboard one of these ships, the Remembrance, as it approached the coordinates for the most important location in the Guardian's database. New Terra, the hidden colony that had preserved not just human survivors but human culture itself. "Long-range sensors are picking up massive structures," reported the navigation officer, a woman who just weeks ago had been scrubbing floors on a Zephyrian station. "Cities in orbit around the primary star, shipyards that dwarf anything in Imperial space." When the survivors of New Terra received their message, the response came back in perfect, ancient Terran standard: "Welcome home, children of Earth. We have been waiting." Standing on the bridge as New Terra grew larger in the view screen, Damon thought about the Guardian who had sacrificed his remaining power to make this moment possible. Across the galaxy, the age of human servitude was ending. The scattered children of the Terran Federation were coming home, and the galaxy would never be the same. The revolution had begun with the touch of a cleaning cloth on an old statue. Now it would end with humanity reclaiming their rightful place among the stars.